I know I've been on a Divorce Diaries rant for quite a while now, but I just want to take a break to just remind you about this podcast and how I record it. If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast everywhere. Seriously. On Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Again, that's anchor.fm to get started or download the Anchor app.
Welcome to the Divorce Diaries podcast. One man's anonymous and live account of if he should get a divorce or stay married. He's been cheated on, and he's cheated. Protecting the innocent with changed voice patterns, the omission of names, ages, and genders. His authentic journey and account of the daily events of his marriage are helping him sort out his feelings and not get lost in the ups or the downs. New episodes are released daily. Welcome to the Divorce Diaries podcast. Entire seasons are released on Patreon weeks before anywhere else at Divorce Diaries Podcast Patreon page. Link in description. Now for today's episode.
My next episode, my next diary entry, Divorce Diaries podcast, where I am no longer the angry piece of shit that I was in my first bunch of recordings that are no longer public. They are no longer up in this podcast feed. I was just an angry, bitchy man. Oh my gosh, I can tell you that is definitely way worse than any angry, bitchy woman. Like, being an angry, bitchy man, are you freaking serious? It is the most, dude, get a tampon, put it in, fucking maxi pad, like, am I going through menopause? Like, hearing a man bitch and complain like I was in all of my recordings, painful. That's all I can say. Fucking painful. So, what I want to talk about in this episode is how much work it actually takes to have a good marriage. It's somewhat of a cliche. Everyone always says it, and they say things like, "Oh, marriage takes work." And you say, what kind of work? And just have a little story really quick. So my grandmother, she's a really nice lady, and she's still with me. She's still with us now, but she had a very long marriage to my grandfather. I don't know, like, they were in that, like, 60-some plus years before he died. And I just, after going through a lot of tough times with my wife and everything, I'm just like, geez. I'm like, fuck. And I felt like I was on the brink so many years ago. I think this was probably before my wife cheated, but it was just, her handling of money and stuff like that was really screwing our family over in my eyes. And I mean, to her, it was a nothing burger. She wasn't really as concerned as the future of our family. And I guess me as a man, that actually is my charter. I didn't really understand how much that was my charter, but just the work that it requires to have a good marriage. When people want to ask that question, like, "Oh, how much work? How much work does it take?" "Oh, it just takes work. Work." It's like, no, first off, most people are fucking idiots themselves, and most people resign themselves to some form of comfort in their marriage, and it's bullshit, and there is no spark in most marriages. There's one, let's take the stats. 50%, over 50% of all marriages end in divorce. Over 50%. What the fuck? That's a big fucking deal. Over 80% of those marriages, the filings are bought by women. So women are exiting marriages so much more frequently than men do, and the ratio for marriages is over 50% in a divorce. So what does that likely mean? It likely means both sides aren't really putting in the type of quote-unquote work that they fucking need to make their marriages work. Now, what is that work? In my last diary entry, I talked about the work that I did as far as cooking. I used to cook all the time, and my wife used to want to be in the kitchen talking with me, and as she would talk with me, she would come behind and she would close the cabinets after I'd open them, because I have a really bad habit of, like, opening cabinets and then closing and not closing them, and she would close them once I was done with one thing. Like, if I'm making shrimp scampi and I've got, like, the butter and the salt and the pepper and the basil or whatever else, and the shrimp's done, and that all those seasonings are in one space, and I'm about to go and make the noodles, she would say, "Hey, you done with this?" or whatever, and she would just come behind me and start cleaning up what I'm doing as I'm cooking. Because while I had one bad habit of never closing the cabinets when I was done, I also had another bad habit of not really picking up after myself. I don't really put things away until it's all done. I'm very process oriented, and in my processing mentally, I'm cooking, so things are coming out to be used. But I don't have the wherewithal to kind of do both, where I'm taking things out to use them, but then I know that I'm keeping track of what I'm finished with, so then I put them away. That's not something that I'm really good at. My wife is a lot better at that, and she would come behind me and she would put stuff away. And I didn't really, I took for granted the amount of work that was actually being done by both of us in that situation. My static cooking the meals, taking everything out, cooking the meals, taking everything out, cooking the meals, plating the food, taking everything out, cooking the meals, plating the food, was me doing somewhat of my quote unquote job. And then my wife coming behind and she's like talking to me and just sitting in. She was like putting in this quality time, this weird quality time with me that I didn't look at the time as quality time. That's work. She's just sitting there. She could have been doing something totally different, but she wasn't. She was actually doing the work of keeping us close. I guess close is probably the word. Keeping us close together, intimate, because we were having conversations, keeping us connected. And whatever we talk about, we may talk about the kids, we may talk about our days, we may talk about money, we may talk about family, extended family, we may talk about vacations that we're planning, we may talk about anything, a YouTube video we saw. It doesn't matter, but we're just kind of talking and connecting. And that's the work that it takes every day. That's the work. And we'll talk about the inverse of that work. So my wife eventually, she stopped doing that because maybe she got caught up doing something, or she started working on her degree. Let's go with that. And the time that she had to be best productive to take her classes might have been after work, during that time that she and I would have likely been intimate, talking while I was doing a physical act of making food for the family or whatever that is, and plating it, and all of my labors of love and her labors of patience and love. She's talking to me and she's cleaning up after me. So then there's only not a little bit of dishes for the kids to do, but there's substantially less, and less kitchen for them to clean up and always putting things away and all those things. So there was just so much work that was being put in between the intimacy in our relationship, with me cooking and then her cleaning and then us talking. There's always so much going on, and that was great. But that is the work, and that is just in that 2 hour window from the time I get home to the time we're sitting down to have dinner. That's the work. The work is also me not oversleeping in the mornings so that I can make sure I got the kids out. So there's no stress on the family because of that. Her making sure that she gets to work on time so she can get back and pick the kids up from daycare, or get them home from school. Those are the things that she needed to do. Those were her crosses to bear. That was the work. And then making sure that dinners are planned in advance or something like that, so that there's no scrambling. Because if there's scrambling, that might mean there's no intimacy with us, and we're not connecting, and there's nothing for me to cook, and there's nowhere for her to sit so we can talk, and we take for granted that we were actually unwinding together in a weird way while connecting, and that's the work. And then furthermore, the work would be her saying to me, I just want to stop you for a second. The amount of consistency and the amount of meals that you cook for us, I really love it. I think it's sexy, and I think you're great for doing that. And thank you, husband. I love you. And me, hey, the fact that you can put up with me leaving cabinets open and everything like that, and all the other quirks that I have, I really know that I wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't be able to do anything like that. Like, it seems like that would really piss me off, but somehow you're really calm and you really handle that like it's nothing. I mean, I absolutely love it. Thank you so much. You're such a sweetie. And thanks for cleaning up after me, because you really make dinner go smoothly. And I do enjoy cooking with you in the room. Thanks so much. And those things were so good. But that's the work. That's the work. And I'm just talking about dinner and a little schedule, then some thank yous. And that shit has to be consistent. You've got to constantly say thank you. You've got to constantly shout out your wife. You've got to constantly shout out your husband. You've got to constantly give the attaboys. You've got to constantly do it. That is the fucking work. If anybody wants to know what's the work, what do you mean? What's the work that it takes for marriage to work? That's the fucking work that it takes for marriage to work. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's the work. It's got to be consistent. That is the work. So don't let people just say like, oh, it just takes work. Marriage is a hard work. It's like, no. You gotta break it down every single day, and you are literally managing the emotions and the feelings of another person by putting in that work. And just like any other job, when you take days off, the work piles up. And the work could pile up in the form of resentment. The work can pile up in the form of hate, or the work can pile up in the form of frustration. And then when there is an opportunity, there is someone else around, that the barriers aren't there, those same familiar hurdles aren't there, and the work seems easy, that's where affairs can happen. That is the breeding ground for an affair. I know that's why I cheated on my wife. And just from some of the things that she said, I know to an extent, as far as you hear her tell it, that's why she cheated on me. There were things she felt like she wasn't getting. Now, it's always funny because, I'll just say for me personally, I cheated, and yes, it was more of the symptom versus the disease, but I cheated. Let's just boil it down in a nutshell and say, oh, I cheated because we were not being intimate, and there was someone familiar that I was able to be intimate with. So I became intimate. I literally wasn't getting something. I cheated and got what I wanted. Now, my wife, on the other hand, she was, I don't know what she was wanting. Maybe it was validation and some self-esteem boosts and someone to tell her the things that she wanted to hear. Now, she could have stopped there because that's what she wanted to get, but instead she became physical. And she had a husband that wanted to be physical with her, but she didn't want to be physical back with him. So when she got what she wanted from someone that was really just wanting to use her, which is why the female affair versus the male affair is such a funny conundrum, because we both want different things out of relationships, yet a woman will give the thing that is supposed to be only for her husband, her body, to another man, whereas the man, his body, quote unquote, his body equivalent, is his money and his providing. So I think that most women might be more upset if they found out that their husband had an entirely different family and was going on vacation with them and not going on vacation with her and their children. It's like wait. There's not enough money to go around and you're going to provide things for them? You're going to provide for them and not us? Whoa. You clearly value them more. Because to be honest, a man can really just become intimate with just about anything. But for him to put what he values, which is his resources, his money, his time, and in any significant measure of either, he really is loving that person. Like right now, as I'm recording this, Bill Gates, there are details coming out surrounding his divorce and marriage, and the potential rumors that before he and Melinda Gates got married, there was an agreement that allowed him to still spend one weekend a year or something like that with an ex-girlfriend. where they could go away for a weekend or a week or something like that. Now, if that's true, Melinda Gates is showing everyone that she was able to share her man, even if it was just for a weekend or a week, a year. She was willing to do that. Now, there are a lot of concessions that people make, and I'm not judging her or Bill for that. There are concessions that people make. I'm going to let you do this, and I'll turn the blind eye. And it doesn't have to be cheating. It could be, geez, I'm just going to keep making the money. You can buy as many bags as you want. I'm going to keep doing this. You can keep doing whatever. It doesn't matter. I can't think of another example, but that's a concession that she decided to make. And most men, if not all, will say, oh, I do not willfully want, desire, will allow my wife to have sex with another man. That is crossing the line, and because of how we're wired, it hits men in a very, very different way. Very different way. I don't know very many men that would even say, yeah, I'll let her spend, a weekend with Hank or something like that. It's like that's not going to be a thing. That's widely adopted amongst men. So anyway, that's just, you don't want to have fertile soil for an affair to grow. You don't want fertile soil for an affair. And the thing that keeps the soil dry and barren and an affair cannot grow there, the way that tends to happen is if you put in the work every day, all the time, and you just, that literally needs to be your primary focus. I mean, I don't want to say more than your job or something, but because I don't know if you're a really high-powered person, and there is no real such thing as work-life balance. It's not a thing. It's like, what do they call it? It's purposeful imbalance or strategic imbalance is the only real balance that you can probably achieve in your life. So you just have to be very careful. I mean, you've got to call your wife and because, use the data on your phone and say, hey, why don't we FaceTime around 12? And then when you do, you just tell her, hey, man, you're looking pretty good, babe. You do something different with your hair? You want your wife to know that she's noticed by you every day. Because if she's going into work and she is a patati, your wife's a hot-looking number. She's a hot little number, and she even got herself maybe a little bit gussied up, and you didn't say a fucking thing to her about how good she looks. When Hank from accounting says something about how good she looks, she's going to feel that. Hank's going to have an impact on your wife just with him saying that. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not going to die. Don't die on the hill of arrogance like I maybe once used to. No, woman should be able to she should be able to keep her shit together. What? Oh, so you're just fishing for compliments? Is that what you're doing? You just want somebody to check you out, huh? Yeah, yeah, he's just validating you, and all you seek is validation, damn woman. Yes. Your wife wants validation. Hopefully, ideally, she wants it from you, and you should be giving it to her. That is work. That is the work that your wife needs, and you need to give it to her. You don't need to do what I did before. You don't need to bitch about it, moan about it, be upset at the realities of the world. Oh, my wife this. I'm so upset. How could she just want this, want that, and don't I do enough? And then you just make it about you, and you start bitching, and you do all of your stupid man shit that I used to do, making your life way harder. Don't do any of those things. Hello, how are you? So don't do any of those things where you'll find yourself not doing the work, or worse, doing the opposite work to damage your relationship. Because you do that, oh man, you're fucked. You're fucked. Absolutely fucked. And that's what my marriage had become, and what it has become, because it's really hard to put that toxic genie. It's really hard to put that toxic genie back in the bottle. Once the once I missed all the validation, she started missing really with all the intimacy, and there's just so many things. It literally is just a snowball of garbage that's happening in our relationship. And it's like, and now because so much time has gone by, I don't even want to put in any of the work. And that's why I said now knowing what I know about marriage and the amount of work that it takes, I don't want to put in that much work for another person. I don't want to do it. I'm actually strongly against it, because I know I need to. I am the one. It's a really big charge. It's like I'm understanding what the commitment of marriage means more and more. The further and further I want to get away from it, I'm like, whoa, it is a big commitment to another person. I really need to be a lot of things really consistently and really patiently for my wife. I really need to be there for her. I really need to make sure that, I need to check in with her just enough, but not too much, but not too little. I need to ask her how she's feeling and what's going on, but I need to not pry, and I need to care but not smother. I need to talk to her but not limit. I need to share with her my problems but not overshare, so that she doesn't feel like I'm dumping on her. And it's a really, really, really big focus that I've got to have. And yeah, it's just really, being married is hard. It's a lot of work. And I know now, like, knowing my wife and who she is, and what she does, what she's capable of doing, what I do, what I'm capable of doing, I know now that I'm like, hey, if she's single, I'm single. It's like, hey, do you want to, you get down on one knee right now, and you could propose to your wife. Would you do it? Or you could propose to this girl. Would you do it? And I'm like, oh, fuck no, I'm not doing that. No, I do not want to. One, be married, yes, but two, be married to this person, because now it's like I am decades in knowing my wife, and I'm like, oh, by no means, under no circumstances, would I get down on one knee and marry this woman. There's no way. I believe that it's just a little bit too much of this. I believe that it's not enough of that. I believe that the things that frustrate me at this point in my life are going to, it would only make our relationship more and more difficult. And all of those things would actually be a fact. They just would be. And it would be something really, really tough on us as a married couple. I don't want to have to ask someone not to spend their money. I would want to be with someone that's like, I'm not going to misspend. I want to sit down around, have a couple of drinks with the woman that I'm with, and she's like, oh, there are these like handful of dumb money decisions that I made, and they're a little bit more, what's the word? They're a little bit more like instances and not habits. Like, oh my gosh, I remember I bought this $600 pair of shoes, and I just stared at them after the fact, and they were on clearance, and so they didn't have a return policy, so I bought them, and oh my gosh, it was almost like I instantly regretted it. And then I did this, and I instantly regretted it. I did that, I instantly regretted it. Things like that are conversations that I want to have, or, man, this is a really big purchase, and I don't regret it. Like, I've got a really expensive watch. For me, really expensive. I'm sure for like Matt Damon or something like that, or Robert Downey Jr., he collects watches. I'm sure for him, it's not that big a deal. He's just like, you spent how much on a watch? And you think that's a lot? Whatever. But, scale is scale. And that's what I spent. So for me, it's a whole shit ton of money. I can't believe I spent it. But those are the conversations that I would like to have with the person that I'm with. I don't want the conversations to consist of something that's different, like, yeah, I've got like $50,000 in credit card debt, and I've had this credit card debt for like 20 years. And I'm like, wow, do you know how much interest you've been paying? And you've probably paid like maybe $300,000 on that $50,000 debt. Do you understand that well, yeah, and then, so I'm now having a conversation not about instances, I'm having a conversation about the habits, who you are and how you spend and your perspective on spending, because you keep doing the same things and you never really pivoted, you never really came up with a way to get yourself out of this situation, you just continued down the path, further putting yourself in what you could call a quote-unquote rut. And I'm just like, wow. So now I know that about my wife, that it's just like, it's going to be hard for me to be the best husband that I can be, the best version of me that I can be, based on the things that she does and the way that she views the world. That doesn't mean her views are wrong or anything like that to me. It just means, holy shit, I don't think I can really fuck with this. Like, wow, wow. This is just I'm gonna be a shitty person to you because of how you live, and you're gonna respond in shitty ways to me because of how I'm responding to how you're living your life. And that's just hard, and that's why I know that I want a divorce from her, because just how we choose to live our lives with our ideals and our morals and our practices are just so different. And I'm saying that in a way not from anger. I'm just like, I get it now. We're just different. We're just different people, and that's okay.
Wow. That was the Divorce Diaries podcast. The Daily Saga will continue tomorrow. The full season's episodes are on Patreon now. Subscribe for early access. Click the Patreon link in the description. Hopefully, these entries help our anonymous recorder as a form of his own personal therapy. That's his hope and his intention. Will these recordings of life's curveballs lead this family to the best resolution in the end? We'll keep listening. New episodes are released daily on all podcast players, but all episodes are available on Patreon at Divorce Diaries Podcast Patreon page. Until next time.